While most Marvel fans are familiar with Natasha Romanoff, the former Soviet assassin and longtime Avenger known as the Black Widow, they may not be as familiar with Yelena Belova, who took over the title of Black Widow after Natasha stopped spying for the Soviets. And that's just the kind of thing that would tick Yelena off, as she spent her whole life living in Natasha's shadow, furiously training to surpass her predecessor as the greatest Soviet operative ever. That drive to prove herself led to multiple showdowns between the two spies before Yelena left Russia to work with other organizations such as S.H.I.E.L.D, Hydra, A.I.M, the Blood Hunters, and the Thunderbolts. But behind her masks and disguises, who is the real Yelena Belova? Where do her loyalties lie? And will she ever be able to climb out of Natasha's massive shadow? We're here to answer all those questions and more. This is Marvel Recap, Yelena Belova. With a special shout out to the official handbook of the Marvel Universe research team for their help. Yelena Belova's story began in the Soviet Union, where she was recruited at a young age to be part of the Red Room, a brutal Soviet espionage program and part-time ballet school. Created during the Cold War and run by a mysterious teacher known only as the head mistress, the Red Room trained young girls to become assassins and spies, conditioning them through brutal physical training, psychological manipulation, and experimentation. While many of the recruits were orphaned or taken at a young age with their pasts erased, we know Yelena wasn't an orphan, as she mentioned having parents in Kiev. And her mom once left her a nagging answering machine message while Yelena was being kidnapped, but we'll come back to that in a bit. As she trained, Yelena was constantly reminded of the Red Room's greatest success, Natalia Romanova, A.K.A. Natasha Romanoff, the original Black Widow. And while Natasha's full story would fill an even longer explainer video, we do need to give a little backstory to explain why Yelena ended up replacing her. You see, when Natasha was first introduced way back in 1964's Tales of Suspense number 52, she was a Soviet spy sent to infiltrate Stark Industries to recover the Soviet defector Ivan Vanko and his Crimson Dynamo armor. But she failed when Vanko sacrificed himself to save Tony Stark. Her mission was to steal plans from Stark's warehouse, and she tricked the circus performer Clint Barton, who used the stage name Hawkeye, into helping her. But she was again thwarted by Iron Man. She was taken back to the Soviet Union and given one last chance to prove she wasn't a traitor. They equipped her with a new costume that allowed her to walk up buildings and swing with wrist-mounted line launcher, all gadgets that would become trademarks of future Black Widows. Despite her new gadgets, this mission ended when Iron Man hit Natasha with electricity from a nearby generator, prompting Hawkeye to abandon the mission in order to save her. Unfortunately, that was her last chance to prove herself to her Soviet commanders, and they gunned her down. Although Hawkeye managed to get her to an ambulance, and it was seeing Natasha injured that inspired Hawkeye to go straight and join the Avengers. Soon thereafter, Black Widow left her Soviet masters, first trying to join the Avengers before signing up with Nick Fury to work for S.H.I.E.L.D. She would eventually join the Avengers, even becoming a team leader. But with Natasha no longer loyal to the Soviet cause, who were they going to use for all their vital Black Widow needs? Here we return back to Yelena, who passed the test to become the Black Widow. Although she felt like she failed, as Romanoff scored higher and passed them when she was 4 years younger. But soon, Yelena was suited up and took on her first costumed assignment as the Black Widow, which was aiding Colonel Yuri Stilenko, head of the Red Room, in his plan to steal technology and resources from A.K.A, home of the Inhumans. Although she wasn't a huge part of the plot, appearing only briefly to jump on the car of Mr. Bigsby in aid of the US ambassador to the United Nations, before handing him a horse statue that contained a hidden transmitter that would take down A.K.A's force fields. As she walked away, she introduced herself as the Black Widow. The next time Yelena showed up, she was following Natasha on a mission to the desert nation of Rapistan to capture a stolen biotoxin. Yelena tracked Natasha across the world by spying on her apartment and stealing a flight attendant's identity. But when Natasha broke into Rapistan's warehouse, she heard a commotion, only to find it was Yelena being captured by some local soldiers. After Natasha dealt with them, Yelena introduced herself, bragging that she's Natasha's equal or better in every way except experience. But she also said she was the first student in the history of the Red Room to beat her test scores. Or so it says on paper. More importantly, Yelena was still loyal to Russia and willing to do anything to finish her mission, including taking out Natasha. Natasha soon discovered that the biotoxin caused anyone exposed to it to fight to the death, earning its title of the Deathless Frenzy. It was so horrible that Natasha decided that no government should have it, no matter what her original orders were. But Yelena was determined to bring the sample back to Russia, and the two ended up at gunpoint. Natasha telling Yelena that she doesn't want Natasha's life, that Natasha had been a pawn of a dozen governments that would shoot her in the back. Natasha asked her, why be the widow when you can be Yelena? And that's when Natasha was immediately shot in the back. What are the odds? Believing Natasha to be dead and not heeding her warning, Yelena continued with her mission, blowing up any army base as a distraction to steal her target, only to be captured by Colonel Khan, a man who planned to expose his own troops to the biotoxin to make them short-lived berserkers. Khan openly admitted his men were expendable so long as he got what he wanted, echoing what Natasha said about Yelena's masters. But Natasha faked her death and secretly arranged to inoculate Khan's troops and Yelena with a vaccine. So when the biotoxin was released, the only one affected would be Colonel Khan. Natasha took him out only to be targeted by Yelena, but Natasha wasn't worried because she knew Yelena was looking forward to coming after her again. The game was Yelena's passion. That's what made her unique. With the biotoxin destroyed, Yelena escaped in a stolen jeep, but Natasha knew that she'd be back. The next time we saw Yelena, she was waking up in Natasha's bed and with Natasha's face. You see, Yelena was in her apartment in Moscow listening to that nagging message from her mom when she was kidnapped by S.H.I.E.L.D, who swapped Yelena's face with Natasha's and dropped her off in Romanoff's life in New York. And after an awkward morning kiss from Natasha's then-boyfriend Daredevil, guess he's not concerned about morning breath, she discovered she had an assignment: to kill Yelena Belova. After a brief fight in the Natural History Museum, she fulfilled her mission, now convinced she was Natasha. Of course, all of this, including the face swapping, was just an elaborate plan from Natasha, who used the confusion to approach General Selenko as Yelena, blackmailing him into revealing the location of the 5 nuclear bombs he had in New York's Hudson Valley. Natasha, as Yelena, tried to disarm the bombs, only to be double-crossed by Selenko, but managed to take him hostage. And when he admitted that Yelena was too naive and he would have killed her in the end, the real Yelena attacked him, and the two widows took him down, together. And while Yelena was still angry about the whole face-swapping thing, Natasha argued that she did it to save Yelena, who's too naive and will get herself killed. Yelena responded by threatening to shoot Natasha, but missed before demanding her face back. During the surgery, Daredevil and Nick Fury debated whether Natasha was sadistic in doing this. Fury argued that Yelena thinks she's a superhero, while Natasha knows that espionage is nasty business. But as Yelena returned to Moscow and the Red Room, maybe she'd finally grown up. And maybe that face swapping had an effect, as the next time we saw Yelena, she was living the high life in Cuba, bragging to Natasha about her $1 million modeling contract, her lingerie empire, and her houses in 6 different countries. Natasha admitted she'd done all right for herself, and that's what Yelena's always been about, herself. Yelena didn't argue, saying that she tried her hand at sacrifice for the motherland, but it never really fit her. And while she used to compete with Natasha, that was before she realized they wanted completely different things out of life. When she said to Natasha, "I got what I wanted, did you?" Natasha had no answer. Sure, Yelena may have seemed focused on herself, but that didn't stop her from later rescuing Natasha when she'd been taken captive. She even used her money and influence to get a helicopter for the rescue. Fancy! But all those other jobs didn't mean that Yelena was finished with espionage, as she next showed up working for S.H.I.E.L.D, battling the New Avengers. The New Avengers were a squad of the Avengers formed after the original Avengers were disassembled by the Scarlet Witch, and they were initially focused on hunting down criminals who'd escaped from the massive super prison, the Raft. One of those escapees was Karl Lykos, a professional hypnotherapist and part-time dinosaur known as Sauron. The new Avengers tracked Lykos to the Savage Land, a tropical area of the Antarctic filled with full-time dinosaurs. That first appeared in 1963's X-Men number 10. The team quickly found Sauron, who was immediately shot by Yelena, who had orders from S.H.I.E.L.D. to clean the area. She then attacked the Avengers and was almost killed by Wolverine, but was saved when Captain America threw his mighty shield. Captured, Yelena refused to reveal who she was working for, and that's when Sauron revived himself and roasted her with his fiery breath. Left scarred and maimed, Yelena was approached by an unknown person who offered to give her some revenge and a repaired face. She accepted, and we soon found out that that offer was from Hydra, who offered to set Yelena up with A.I.M, also known as Advanced Idea Mechanics, who could give Yelena the power of the super Adaptoid. There's a lot to unpack in that sentence, but if you're not familiar with them, Hydra was an evil, cult-like organization that often fights S.H.I.E.L.D. while wearing green outfits. While A.I.M was a former branch of Hydra that broke away to become an evil cult-like organization that did science while wearing yellow beekeeperish outfits. And the Super Adaptoid was a shape-shifting android created by A.I.M that could mimic superhuman abilities, and frequently clashed with the Avengers, but didn't really wear outfits. He was just green. As Captain America, Tony Stark, and the Sentry met the mayor of New York, Yelena appeared and tossed the Sentry into Avengers Tower. With her new Adaptoid powers allowing her to absorb all the powers of the new Avengers, including Luke Cage's unbreakable skin and Carol Danvers' strength, Yelena had the power to punch out the Sentry and withstand an army of Iron Man armors. But just as Yelena was proving unbeatable, the Sentry revealed that she had also absorbed his weakness, the Void. That's the dark entity that lives inside Sentry's mind, which he has to constantly struggle to control. Yelena was overwhelmed by the Void and left sobbing. When the team demanded to know who's behind this, Hydra triggered a molecular destruct button that blew up Yelena, leaving nothing but a puddle of goo. And that was the end of Yelena Belova. Or was it? Because the next time we saw Yelena, she was somehow back to normal and a member of the superhuman Black Ops team Vanguard, working alongside vampire hunter Blade, mercenary Dominic Fortune, and size-changing hero Micromax to take on the rogue super soldier Colonel America. During the Dark Reign storyline, we learned that Yelena had left the Vanguard to work on her own when she was caught stealing weapons from a decommissioned S.H.I.E.L.D. facility. Norman Osborn, the head of Hammer, the espionage organization that sprung up after the collapse of S.H.I.E.L.D., expressed some fake surprise as everyone thought she'd been vaporized fighting the Avengers. Norman was recruiting a new off-the-books assassination team and offered Yelena a job as the field leader of the new Thunderbolts team. She agreed and led the team for a short time before revealing she wasn't Yelena, but Natasha, who'd been recruited to infiltrate the organization by Nick Fury. However, the real Yelena was alive and being kept in suspended animation by A.I.M. When Yelena next popped up, it was during a mission of the Secret Avengers, a Black Ops S.H.I.E.L.D. team that's so secret that each member's memory was erased after each mission, using the code word Reverie, meaning they can't even remember why they agreed to join the team. The mission? Infiltrate A.I.M., which was under the new management of Scientist Supreme, Andrew Forson, who had taken over the sovereign island of Barbuda, renaming it A.I.M Island. Forson put together a new A.I.M High Council, which included Yelena, who'd been defrosted, and was now A.I.M's Minister of State. A strike team of Nick Fury, Hawkeye, and Natasha landed on the island to take out Forson, while Taskmaster and Mockingbird infiltrated another part of the island using holographic camo-tech camouflage. Just as Natasha was ready to snipe Forson, Yelena threw her out a window. Luckily, Natasha was saved by one of Hawkeye's parachute arrows. When they tried to escape, Yelena held Mockingbird at gunpoint, leading to a gun battle where A.I.M agents shot Mockingbird. Or so we thought, as Mockingbird had used her camo-tech disguise to switch places with Yelena. And a furious Mockingbird took out Forson. And that was the end of Yelena Belova. Or was it again? Yeah, that happens a lot with Black Widows. Yelena wasn't the only dead Black Widow, as Natasha was killed during the Secret Empire storyline by the Hydra-controlled Captain America. So, when Bucky and Hawkeye found evidence that Natasha was alive, they tried to chase her down, only to discover they were chasing Yelena instead. Weirdly, this Yelena only spoke Russian and was terrified of failing the Winter Soldier. They tried to follow her to her home base, only for Yelena to be shot by an unknown assassin. And when they finally tracked that assassin down, it was Natasha, or at least a clone of Natasha. It turned out the remaining members of the Red Room moved to the States, where they were training a new generation of ballerina assassins, while also cloning some of their best agents, including Natasha and Yelena. They used a psychic agent named Yurgey Ivanov, codenamed Epsilon Red, to restore the clones' memories, using saved backups. Natasha was supposed to be only given the memories that would help her as an agent. However, Epsilon gave her all of her memories back, thanks to a bribe from Natasha's old comrade, Mikhail Ursus, A.K.A. Ursa Major, a Russian mutant who transforms into a bear. And the bribe? He let Epsilon pet him. Adorable. Natasha and Ursa started a plan to take down the Red Room from within. All those dead Yelenas? They were just mindless blanks. And when Bucky and Hawkeye managed to infiltrate the Red Room base, Natasha was forced to fight her way past an army of her own clones, with some help from those ballerinas and a bear. After killing the leaders of the Red Room, Natasha used Epsilon Red to restore the memories of the two clones, Yelena and another Black Widow named Anya. As soon as he was finished, Natasha killed Epsilon Red, saying she wanted the Red Room to finally end. And while Bucky carried a restored Yelena to safety, Natasha blew the whole thing up. Natasha later hired Yelena to help track down a copycat Black Widow who'd framed Natasha for murder, although she admitted that she was also making sure Yelena wasn't the copycat. Natasha confronted the copycat, who turned out to be a different Anya, the daughter of the Red Room's headmistress, who wanted to kill Natasha to drum up business for the new Red Room. That's when Natasha stopped her with a weapon Anya could never understand: allies. Finally free of the Red Room's control, Yelena returned to a quiet life in Moscow, but was soon recruited by billionaire Justin Kask. And after pointing out that she's not the Black Widow, but was a Black Widow, briefly, Yelena agreed to take on Kask's mission, breaking a doctor out of a S.H.I.E.L.D. Black Ops prison in Antarctica. And she did it wearing a new all-white costume that would lead to her new codename, the White Widow. She soon discovered it was all a setup, as Kask had bought the prison after S.H.I.E.L.D. was decommissioned, turning the inmates into his private army. And he sent in Yelena to test their abilities. Battling her way through the inmates, she stumbled upon the last unreleased prisoner, Alexei Shostakov, A.K.A. Red Guardian. If you're not familiar with Red Guardian, he's basically the Russian version of Captain America, first appearing way back in 1967's Avengers number 43. He was also Natasha Romanoff's ex-husband. A former Soviet test pilot, the government staged Alexei's death to turn him into the Soviet hero, the Red Guardian. His apparent death was what inspired Natasha to become the Black Widow. Yelena and Red Guardian battled their way out of the prison, only for him to stay behind, allowing Yelena to escape. Although that might have just been because he wanted to keep beating on the prisoners. Once back in New York, Yelena used her hacking skills to break into Kask's bank account and donate his fortune to charity, bankrupting him. And Red Guardian? He was fine, and soon worked with Yelena on a mission to take on the Soviet super team, the Winter Guard, which includes Alexei's successor as Red Guardian, Nikolai Krylenko, now calling himself Vanguard. Not long after, Hawkeye and Bucky discovered that Natasha was living a seemingly normal life in San Francisco as a woman named Natalie. Yelena showed up to help, infiltrating her home as a babysitter, Helen. Yelena questioned Natalie about her past while shopping for wedding dresses, pointing out that she didn't seem too happy. Natalie admitted that sometimes it feels like there's another her inside her body and she's always screaming. After regaining her memories, Natasha realized that she'd been captured by Madame Hydra, who brainwashed her into thinking she had an average suburban life, as well as manipulating a man named James Gray into believing he was her fiancé and creating a baby, Stevie, from their DNA. When Natasha took down some Hydra agents, Yelena pitched in, only for Natasha's family to be caught in an explosion. But Yelena was there to slap Natasha out of her tears, telling her there will be time for grief later. Natasha, Yelena, and Hawkeye hunted down the people behind the conspiracy, which included Red Guardian, who apologized, saying he didn't know how far it would go. Natasha let him leave before setting the whole place on fire. But Natasha's family was still alive, as she'd secretly asked Bucky to fake their deaths, hiding them away to where even she could never find them. While some of the Hydra agents escaped, Natasha told Yelena that she was done with revenge, saying she wanted to do something different with her life. Something James and Stevie would be proud of, that she could be proud of. And she would take Yelena along with her. Yelena traveled to San Francisco and moved in with Natasha, where they enjoyed some quality shopping time until they ended up chasing a crafty pickpocket named Lucy Nguyen. Seeing Lucy's moves gave Yelena an idea. Why don't they start their own Red Room? Natasha was against it, but when the two tracked down a mysterious new villain by the name of Apogee, Natasha found Lucy in his lair. She brought her back to their home in the Tenderloin district, which they dubbed the Web. There, Yelena started training Lucy, who turned out to have electrical powers. Natasha enlisted the help of Anya Corazon, codenamed Spider-Girl, who managed to get access to Apogee's hideout. He was actually a cult leader by the name of Aldrich Lux Voss, who gave his followers a serum that provided super abilities, but it came with the risk of completely liquefying them. Lucy turned out to be one of those injected, so the widows needed to find the antidote quick. They infiltrated a cult meeting where Yelena was electrocuted and killed by one of Apogee's goons. And this was the end of Yelena Belova. For about a minute, until Lucy used her own electrical powers to shock Yelena and restart her heart. With the help of a scientist they turned from Apogee's followers, the team created an antidote and staged another attack. This time, Apogee took his own serum, transforming into a super Apogee. As the team fought, they were suddenly joined by Kate Bishop, A.K.A. Hawkeye, along with the scientists and Lucy, who brought the antidote. Lucy injected Apogee before Natasha kicked him into a vat of goo, and just as Lucy's powers were about to explode, Natasha injected her too. With the rest of the cultists dosed with the antidotes, Natasha and Yelena walked away with the rest of their team. Despite all the positive support in becoming a teacher, Yelena decided to take a step back and move to the seemingly peaceful suburban neighborhood called Idlehaven. She gave herself the mission of figuring out what she actually loves and hates, supporting herself by working as a consultant to up-and-coming young assassins. She also had a dog named Bint Clarton, which everyone should have in their love category. It was all going well until a tech company called Armament started buying up Idlehaven's land and businesses. Oh, and they were using the neighborhood as a training ground for their agents, offering bionic upgrades to injured assassins, then having them work off their medical debt on missions. Yelena tracked down the woman behind Armament, supermodel Renata Best, who offered Yelena a job training her assassins, but Yelena refused to harm the citizens of Idlehaven or her friends in the assassins community, so she took out Renata's army, then Renata. And after meeting with some of her neighborhood friends, Yelena agreed to work with them to protect Idlehaven from whatever happens next, as a team. And that's not the only team Yelena's recently joined. The first was the Blood Hunters, a team that hunts and eliminates vampires, which she joined after she was briefly turned into a vampire and cured by the team's leader, Dagger. The team also rolls with a gnarly vampire cat named Moggy. While the other team is the Thunderbolts. The latest version of the Thunderbolts was formed by Bucky Barnes, the former Winter Soldier, to finally take down his longtime nemesis, the Red Skull. Other teammates included Sharon Carter, A.K.A. the Destroyer, a life model decoy of Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, and Red Guardian. Bucky recruited Yelena and Natasha to infiltrate a high society party at the Hellfire Club, a secret society of wealthy, powerful elites who manipulate global events from the shadows. Their mission was to steal the Red Skull's funds, but first they had to get past the Hellfire Club's new White King, the Kingpin, which led to a massive fight. And we learned that Yelena is much more dangerous when she feels cute. The Thunderbolts eventually added new members like John Walker, codenamed the U.S. Agent, and Shang-Chi, Master of the Ten Rings. And they managed to take out the Red Skull with the help of Dr. Doom. Yelena agreed to stay with the team as they looked for another target, proving that she's come a long way from the selfish, cold Soviet assassin that needed to prove she was the best. What's next for Yelena in the comics? The Thunderbolts are currently dealing with the One World Under Doom storyline, where Dr. Doom has declared himself Emperor of the World. After Bucky turned down a spot as Doom's head of secret police, he was framed for the destruction of his hometown of Shelbyville, Indiana. Bucky and the team went on the run, trying desperately to find a way to take down Doom's reign. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Yelena has a slightly different origin. When we first met her in Marvel Studios' Black Widow, Yelena was just a kid, part of a fake American family assembled by the Red Room to infiltrate America. Natasha Romanoff was her slightly older quote-unquote sister, while her mom was former Black Widow Melina Vostokov, and her dad was Alexei Shostakov, the former Soviet super soldier Red Guardian. But when their cover was blown, the family fled to Cuba, where they were separated. Yelena and Natasha were thrown into the Red Room program under the control of General Dreykov, who trained them to be assassins. 21 years later, Yelena worked with a group of other Black Widows on a mission in Morocco, with orders to assassinate a former Black Widow, when she was blasted with a chemical that freed her from her Red Room programming. She set out to free the other widows, sending an antidote to Natasha. The two reunited in Budapest. Although Yelena was angry, as she believed Natasha abandoned her and the other Black Widows, really angry. But Natasha thought she'd killed Dreykov years ago, along with his young daughter, Antonia, during a mission in Budapest. That was her last step in defecting to S.H.I.E.L.D. It was a mission that haunted her ever since, so much so that Loki taunted her about it in Marvel Studios' The Avengers.
Can you wipe out that much red? Dreykov's daughter?
They reluctantly teamed up to finally stop Dreykov, only to be chased down by his enforcer, Taskmaster, before recruiting their parents, Alexei and Melina, to bring down the Red Room once and for all. Working together, they were able to free the mind-controlled Black Widows and destroy the Red Room, where Yelena sacrificed herself to take out Dreykov's plane. Or, at least, until Natasha was able to catch up with a parachute. Natasha was also able to save Taskmaster, who turned out to be Dreykov's daughter, by releasing her from Dreykov's mind control. Natasha apologized to Yelena for not coming back, admitting that their family was real to her too. Yelena set off on a mission to find and free the rest of Dreykov's operatives, joined by some newly freed Black Widows, Red Guardian, Melina, and Taskmaster. She was on that mission when we next saw her in Marvel Studios' Hawkeye, where Yelena was tracking down a potential Black Widow. But during a trip to the bathroom, Yelena disappeared, part of the half of humanity that turned to dust when Thanos snapped the Infinity Gauntlet. When she and the rest of those taken out by the blip returned, 5 years had passed. Yelena would later learn that Natasha sacrificed herself to help restore half the universe by reversing the snap during Marvel Studios' Avengers Endgame. In the post-credits scene of Black Widow, Yelena visited Natasha's grave, only to get a visit from a shadowy government operative, Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, who gave her a new target, Clint Barton, A.K.A. Hawkeye. Val claimed he was responsible for Natasha's death, sending Yelena off on a mission of vengeance. That leads back to Marvel Studios' Hawkeye, where Yelena found and fought Hawkeye on a New York rooftop. She also broke into the apartment of Kate Bishop to eat mac and cheese. Yelena also let Kate know she was going to kill Clint. Later, Yelena ambushed Clint at Rockefeller Center, leading to a fight on the ice rink. Clint tried to explain that Natasha sacrificed herself to save him, despite him fighting her. Yelena beat him, but he refused to fight, and she moved in for the kill. Until Clint used Natasha's secret whistle, the one the sisters had used as kids, before telling Yelena about all the love that Natasha had for Yelena, which she'd shared with Clint. Convinced of his sincerity, she holstered her gun and walked away, still searching for a purpose beyond revenge. And when we next saw her in Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts, Yelena was still looking for that purpose, while still taking missions for CIA Director Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. And after a quick visit to Red Guardian for some fatherly advice, she was sent by Valentina on a mission that pitted her against John Walker, the US government's choice to replace Sam Wilson as Captain America, who was first seen in Marvel Studios' The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But John Walker was being targeted by Taskmaster, who was being targeted by Ghost, an intangible assassin who battled Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne in Marvel Studios' Ant-Man and the Wasp. Yelena, Walker, Taskmaster, and Ghost were all double-crossed by Valentina, caught in a death trap with a seemingly ordinary guy named Bob.
I'm Bob.
And while Taskmaster didn't make it, the rest ended up being chased and joined by Bucky. But when Valentina got her hands on Bob and his incredible powers, Yelena and her ragtag crew, having unofficially adopted the name of the Thunderbolts after Yelena's childhood soccer team, hit New York City to save Bob, now dubbed the Sentry. Things went pretty badly for the Thunderbolts, and Yelena walked off after a heart-to-heart with Alexei, where she admitted she was struggling.
I don't have anything anymore.
Alexei reminded her why she wanted to be the goalie on that childhood soccer team.
You told me I want to be the one everyone can rely on if they make a mistake. That Lena is still in you?
Yelena and the team were forced into action as Bob's dark side, the Void, emerged, slowly engulfing the city and everyone in it. Stepping up to face the darkness head-on, Yelena led the team in a daring mission to rescue Bob from himself. Emerging stronger together, the team set their sights on the real thorn in their side, Valentina, while Valentina surprised the team by setting them up as
the new Avengers.
Yelena quickly turned the tables on Valentina.
We own you now.
She'd finally found her purpose, leaning into her role as a hero, a leader, and an Avenger. Want to learn more? Sign up for Marvel Unlimited to access decades of Yelena, Black Widow, and Thunderbolts comics. Want to find out what's next? Read current and upcoming issues of Thunderbolts and more comics, available where your favorite comics are sold. You can watch Black Widow and Hawkeye on Disney Plus to catch Yelena Belova in action. And see Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts only in theaters right now. This has been Marvel Recap, Yelena Belova.